Welcome back to the webcast. Today is Friday, so we are talking about college football, but what a sporting weekend we have starting today, even with the MLB playoffs. But let's get into college football picks and the great sporting weekend that is coming up. Let's do it. Welcome back to the webcast, All Sports One Web. Doug is unable to join me today, but we will be still going through all of our college football picks for the upcoming weekend. Week 6 in college football already is flying by. We are entering now week 3 of conference play. The schedules are really starting to heat up. The undefeated teams are dwindling week after week after week. So we are going to get into those picks. We had a crazy week of college football last week. We'll get into that. But I just want for all of you sport fans out there, we have MLB playoffs today, starting at noon, going all the way through the night with the wild card games, best of 3 series. Then we got game 2 tomorrow, possible game 3s on Sunday, followed by a full jam-packed college football weekend on Saturday, NFL on Sunday. Also on Sunday, for all of us MLS fans out there, it is the last game of the season from MLS. Selection Sunday, Decision Day Sunday, whatever you want to call it. It's where the playoffs finally get set. We got, I think, 4 teams out of the Eastern Conference, all with an opportunity to book their place into the playoffs as the top 7 from each conference advance there in the MLS. They could make it or break it. We had some great games over the last week as we were leading up to it, and congratulations to LAFC for taking home the Community Shield, which is just the trophy in Major League Soccer for the team out of either conference that finishes with the most amount of points at the end of a season. 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 for a loss. We see that across the soccering world as the same system. So we got sports everywhere this weekend. Great time of year, one of those months in the sporting calendar where things are getting to the middle of the season and at the end of the season. So things across the sporting world are really heating up. So go and enjoy the weekend. But today is Friday, so on the webcast here, that is all about college football, and what a weekend we had last weekend. Georgia, who started off the season defending champs, ranked 3rd in the country in the AP poll entering the season. Their dominating win against Oregon in Georgia's backyard down in Atlanta really catapult them up the rankings, number 1 for the last couple of weeks in the AP poll. But 2 consecutive questionable performances, being in a game late against Kent State, and not even having a lead last week against Mizzou, Missouri, until 4 minutes left in the game, has now dropped them to 2nd behind Alabama in the AP poll. Alabama up 26 to nothing against Arkansas, let them all the way back into that game before they then blow them away. How's Bryce Young going to be moving forward? Is this an injury he can recover fully from? Is it going to be lingering throughout the season? How is it going to get as they get more and more games of conference play, higher competition throughout the rest of the season? How is he going to hold up there? So a lot of interesting things that came out from last weekend in college football. A huge game in the Big 12 between Oklahoma State and Baylor. Oklahoma State showing that they might be part of that upper echelon in the Big 12 that, in my opinion, I was looking for. The Big 12 and the Pac-12, I feel like it's going to be hard for any team to go through that kind of schedule with all the teams being, pretty decent and to good teams, but all level. We think very highly of even Baylor, who was ranked 16th going into last week. Oklahoma State, USC is creeping up in people's rankings. in the Pac-12. Washington State still pretty strong despite their loss to Oregon 2 weeks ago. Oregon rebounding pretty nicely there with Bo Nix up there in Eugene after their thumping from Georgia. So both of these conference, Utah, of course, with a good win last week against Oregon State. Both these conferences, especially when you throw in the likes of Kansas and we'll get into that a little bit more. Kansas, TCU, even Oregon rebounding Washington with what they were able to do to a team like Michigan State, who, offensively they aren't the greatest, but we know what they could do defensively to put that passing attack against them. These teams can beat each other on any given Saturday, and I feel like those conferences, it's going to be hard to get a champion, but right now we have a couple unbeatens in both conferences, and this is where they start playing each other, and this is where college football really starts to get exciting, so we can see who's going to make it through unscathed, put themselves in pole position for a college football berth. And when you're talking about the Pac-12, who the last team to make it was Oregon back in the inaugural playoff there. Oh, I like Washington, I think is the last team. Yeah, Washington. But still not a team in recent memory. They're coming out of the Pac-12 into the college football playoff. The Big 12 missing out last year as well. So, yeah, it's tough for them and with the schedules that they have. But let's go ahead and dive into our picks for Week 6. Change it. There we go. And let's start here with Red River, Oklahoma and Texas. What a game this is going to be. It usually is always a good game where one team is scoring above 40, and sometimes it goes close. Oklahoma has won the last 3 of this. They are coming off back-to-back blowouts. Kansas State with Adrian Martinez 2 weeks ago, going into Norman and handing Oklahoma their first of 2 consecutive blowout losses, and TCU putting 55 on them last week. We're going to get to TCU in a little bit here, but just Oklahoma went from a top 10 team 2 weeks ago to now unranked. Texas, even with, we'll get Quinn Ewers back, which is such a big help for them. We saw what he was able to do against Alabama before his injury a couple weeks ago. Texas has stuttered, losing one other game besides that close loss to Alabama a couple weeks ago. So they have fallen outside of the top 25 in the AP poll, marking the first time that the Red River rivalry showdown there at the Cotton Bowl will be between 2 unranked teams since 1998. So, and in my personal opinion, with the form of Oklahoma and with Quinn Ewers coming back, I'm going to bump Texas up, even though they're both unranked. I'm going to put Texas higher on my ranking than I am Oklahoma at this time, and hopefully Quinn Ewers can return to how he was before his injury. And it might take some time for him to get there, but I'm going to assume that he's going to get back to that kind of form, especially being a young quarterback. Every game is going to drive him forward even more. So I think he'll recover. He'll look better purely because of the more experience that he gets than before he got hurt, in my opinion, because I think the experience are going to outweigh the injury that he had. And he'll get physically back, but it might take a little bit more time for that to catch up. So I have Texas ranked higher than Oklahoma, which this is the first time that this game will have taken place with Texas higher than Oklahoma since 2009. And so I think being a neutral site game, despite Oklahoma having 2 losses, I don't, and they're going to need to right this after taking 2 consecutive losses in the Big 12. If they want any shot of being there at the end, they're going to view this game as a must win. But for me, with the weapons that Texas have, the uplift of bringing Quinn Ewers back, I think is going to be great for the entire locker room. And I think that he wants to get back out there, especially going out against Alabama. I mean, 2 of the biggest games on Texas's schedule every year, or this year, definitely always is Oklahoma, but then to pair that with Alabama to start the season. That was Quinn Ewers' last game that he's played, and so I think he's going to pick off right where he left off and take Texas to victory and push Oklahoma to 3-3 on the season. Brett Venables, I don't know if anyone thought that his team would start 3-3 and let up as many points as they've had in the last two games, cracking over 90 points allowed in their last two games. One of those was 55 points by TCU, who take on undefeated Kansas, who currently sit atop the Big 12. TCU right there with them. Both teams averaging over 40 points of offense per game, or 40 points per game to start the season. TCU obviously having some good opponents in Oklahoma last week. Still Oklahoma to put up 55 is still a statement despite them losing back-to-back weeks. Kansas, we've seen them take on some good opponents as well this year, putting up over 420 yards per game of total offense, 201 through the air, 218 on the ground, sitting atop the Big 12 standings as well. So this one's going to be a great game. TCU travels into Kansas as they are both ranked in the top 25 now. But for me personally, with two quarterbacks that have a combined 1 interception and 22 or so touchdowns between them, this is going to be a close game. But I'm going to take TCU to edge it out and take control of the Big 12 standings, going 5-0 to start the season. What a start from the Horned Frogs. Tennessee has been marching their way up the standings, but I think LSU has secretly snuck into 4-1. I don't know, especially with the powerhouses that we have in the SEC. When you look at Alabama and Georgia and the way that they have been performing last year and then going into this year, LSU has kind of snuck under the radar, especially with that opening game loss to Florida State down there in Louisiana. I think people have kind of written them off, but 4 consecutive wins, Southern, Mississippi State, New Mexico, and then Auburn have set them up to be in the top 25 before taking on Tennessee down in Baton Rouge as well. And that's why I think that this game is going to be a little bit more interesting. Tennessee 2.5-point favorites in this one, but being in Baton Rouge, I think, is the reason why that margin might be a little bit lower. We know Tennessee can score with the best of them this season. Obviously 4-0 with the great win a couple weeks ago against Florida in their top 20 matchup. We picked that here on the webcast. All of our picks are done through ESPN, so go ahead and make your account and pick along with us. We are 15-14 on college football, so out of the 3 NFL, EPL, and college football, this one is our lowest percentage. So hopefully we can bring it up, but that gives you a chance to beat us. So go ahead and make your account on ESPN and get your picks in each week with us here Friday at 7 p.m. and see how you do by the end of the season and see if we can keep a winning record across all 3. Tennessee, the last 3 games, 38, 63, 34, 59 on Ball State to kick off the year. Beating Pitt and Florida as both ranked teams has allowed them to crack the top 10. I don't remember the last time Tennessee was in the top 10 of the AP poll, but here they are, and rightfully so. And I think this game is closer because it is in Baton Rouge, but I am taking the Tennessee Volunteers in this one. And now we move to a great Pac-12 matchup. UCLA sitting at 5-0 there with USC atop the Pac-12 standings. Early days, of course. Utah taking 1 loss, but come in 4-1 to start the season. Their loss when they traveled to the Swamp against Florida with Robinson there putting on the best performance he's had all season. and handing Utah their only loss of the season as they travel into UCLA. And I feel like this game, Chip Kelly has been there for 3 or 4 years now at UCLA, and we've been waiting and waiting for him to kind of get his players in there, get them established. UCLA, one of the, considered probably more of a basketball powerhouse than football powerhouse. No, I mean, it's not even close. Let me be real. But Chip Kelly was supposed to help bring that back up, especially in a Pac-12 that at the time was, this was a little bit fading. And here we are. They are ranked in the top 25, 5-0 to start the season here, and they will take on Utah. This one is super interesting to me, and I really don't know what to make of it. So let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on these predictions, as well as what you picked when you make your ESPN account on here. But the fact that UCLA is ranked is fantastic, sitting at 18 with a great win last week against Washington, putting up 40 plus in the last 2 games, Washington and Colorado, as they take on Utah. But I think this is a different level of despite Washington being ranked 15th, I think that was a lot to do with their performance against Michigan State, the way that Washington has started the season, starting 4-0, a emphatic win against a ranked Michigan State team. It's kind of been that story. You're undefeated and you have a good win under your belt, and since it's early in the season, we don't really know how everybody is really where they level out to be. That kind of gets figured out in conference play. And Washington destroying Michigan State through the air a couple weeks ago, being 4-0, then losing to UCLA. Washington drops out of the top 25, or drops to 21, I guess. And UCLA, as being an undefeated, needs to be ranked higher than Washington, and therefore UCLA is ranked. Utah, however, losing to Florida, a good team with that performance. I think that was the best game Florida's put together on the field all year, and they are a decent team. And Utah's been able to battle back 4 consecutive wins and be ranked 11th in this one. And I think that is why Utah gets the win. The experience that they have, the offense that they have, I think is just a different level of competition than UCLA has really played this year. UNC traveling to Miami. Both teams who, it seems like every year we talk about who can challenge Clemson in the ACC, and with Mack Brown as the head coach there at North Carolina, the quarterback play that they've been able to have for the last couple of years there, we feel like that always gives them a chance to really compete in the ACC, and rightfully so. But this one away to Miami, I think, is going to be a tougher challenge for them. So for that reason, I am going to go with the Hurricanes down there in Miami to take the win. Western Kentucky, 3-2, UTSA, the team that was running like a Roadrunner last year with I think they went undefeated the whole year, if not at least 10 games last year, really kind of being part of that group that was talked about last year, with Cincinnati obviously being the cream of the crop of the group of 5. But UTSA getting some shouts for their undefeated season, despite maybe being against lesser competition. They're going to be at home there in the desert, and so I like University Texas San Antonio, the Roadrunners, to take the win in that one. Iowa State is like, for those who follow the EPL with us here at the webcast every Wednesday, 7 p.m., we do our EPL picks. Iowa State is like my Wolverhampton team, where I have probably an unrealistic expectation of them with the way that they've been able to play against good teams over the last couple of years, the defensive, gritty style that I love teams to have. Iowa State has had that. We've seen them beat Oklahoma when Oklahoma was, up there in the college football playoff every year. Iowa State was always a tough place to go and play and get a win. We've seen them take down Baylor. We've seen them take down, just juggernauts of the Big 12 they've been able to take down. Now they play Kansas State, who, at 4-1 with that great win in Norman a couple of weeks ago, are ranked inside the top 25. Iowa State falling again last week, pushing them into the life of the unranked now. And pulling up the 0-2 in the conference. Yeah, 0-2 in the conference now. Iowa State is there with Oklahoma and West Virginia at the bottom. This is a must-win game for them if they think that they're going to have any hope. Low-scoring affair away to Kansas last time out. That great game with Baylor a couple weeks ago that we picked here on the webcast as an Iowa State victory. But I am going to stick with it despite those two losses, similar to Oklahoma, or opposite of Oklahoma. I think that they can keep this as a close game and actually cause Martinez problems and come out with the victory there at home. Washington State 4-1. Lincoln Riley takes the top 6th ranked USC Trojans into their 6th game of the season as they look to go undefeated with Caleb Williams there. And be one of those teams that is going to be representing the Pac-12 with a chance of making the college football playoff. Could you imagine Lincoln Riley, the 40-plus transfers that they've had, bringing in the number 1 wide receiver who won the Best Wide Receiver in the Country award last year from Pitt, bringing in Caleb Williams, obviously from Oklahoma as well, along as a bunch of other transfers, really remaking that team with such a great start to start the season at 5-0. And if they can keep putting together these wins in the Pac-12, they have a great chance of, putting their ring in the hat to make the college football playoff, especially if they can go on and win the Pac-12 for the first time in, I think, over a decade since USC has been Pac-12 champion. We got a great game next week when they take on Utah. We expect Utah to get a win this week. They will travel there to Salt Lake to take on Utah as a potential top 10 matchup, and I want to see it. So let's go USC in this one. Go fight Trojans. What is their song? Fight on? The Trojan symbol there. Notre Dame starting off 0-2, gritty loss to Ohio State to start week 1 as they were the 5th ranked team in the country. They go home and give Marshall their second, I think they're ranked 8 at the time, so second top 10 win in Marshall's history there at home, followed up by quarterback change and poor play, but Notre Dame has rallied to win 2 straight as they go back home where they have not played well this season and take on a BYU team that sits at 4-1 so far, with some great games that BYU has played this season. We remember the great game that they had against Baylor in double overtime to start the season. They followed that up with a game away to Oregon, and I think BYU is definitely a team that plays really well at home, despite dropping 50 away to Southern Florida, UCF there, right outside Tampa. Notre Dame 3.5-point favorites at home. Obviously, Notre Dame has been, struggling. Their 2 home games, I believe, this season were Cal and Marshall. Yes, Cal and Marshall. That Cal game, they should have taken an L and been 0-3 to start the season. If it wasn't for that ghost of an offsides call called against Cal's defense when Notre Dame missed a field goal there late in the 3rd quarter, they were able to then get a first down from that ghost offsides call and get a touchdown out of it, I believe. They won 24-17 in that one, kind of rebounding. They went into North Carolina and picked up the win as well. Now they return home where they haven't scored more than 24 against either Marshall or Cal. Can they do it against a 16th ranked BYU team? That is the question. And I think they can. I think they rebound. They had the quarterback change. Payne going 24-34, almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns last week against North Carolina. And that was away from home, returning home, trying to put together a good performance. I think they will do it against BYU. Florida State, 4-1. NC State, 4-1. NC State, another one of those teams where we kind of hope that they're going to be a team that can challenge there in the ACC, and I think at home the Wolfpack are going to get it done. And there you have it, all 10 picks here from us at the webcast. Go ahead, get your picks in, ESPN.com. My pick, 7 p.m. on Fridays, we do college football. Tuesday, 7 p.m., we do NFL, and Wednesdays we talk all about soccer. As we edge closer to the World Cup, we will also be adding more content, getting you ready for the U.S. men's national team's return to the World Cup after missing out in 2018. So stay tuned with us as we're going to go through lineups, group play. We've already had 2 episodes about the World Cup where we really talked about structure and what we kind of thought of the U.S.'s performances recently with 2 tune-up games in the last international break a couple weeks ago against Japan and Saudi Arabia. And the injury concerns, the lack of game time. We're going to dive into all of that to get you hyped and ready for a great group that kicks off late November in Qatar for the U.S. Opening game is against Wales, so stay tuned for that. And I really want to, before we let you go here, I really want to talk a little bit more about just college football in general here. With last week, I think was a very telling and interesting week because you had Alabama with the injury to Bryce Young, the little bit, I don't know, like 2-minute scare against Arkansas, where Arkansas made it a 2-point game there after being down 24. Georgia, obviously, you look at them, their performance, especially against Oregon in week 1, but really their physique, their defensive ability, the way they fly around, the way they muscle people, you kind of expect them to dominate. They're built to dominate teams that are inferior to them. And the last 2 weeks, they've kind of struggled, and they just got over the line against Kent State, just got over the line against Mizzou after a couple of turnovers. They weren't able to get the lead until 4 minutes left in that game. And it's just interesting the way that one game can make or break. And I watched Joel Klatt, who I love, and if you haven't heard of him, he is on Fox Sports. He has the Joel Klatt Show on Fox Sports there. Go check his channel out as well, as he does 3 episodes of college football a week leading up to Big Noon Saturdays. This week, Michigan away to Penn State, I believe. Is it Indiana? Maybe it's Indiana. And he was talking about a couple of weeks ago about how he thinks that the top 3 teams are Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, and they are not as susceptible to losing against a lower ranked team, as they have kind of broken the threshold of being too good to lose. And I think it's an interesting way to look at it, because if you look at Georgia's last 2 games, and Joel Klatt has ranked Georgia now 3rd, dropped them from number 1 that he had them based on this last 2 weeks performance. You can look at it as they should beat them by more, or you can look at them as they had a bad day and still were able to win. And you take Kirby Smart's comments, it's hard to win in the SEC, and it's hard to win away from home. And yes, that is true. It's hard to win in the SEC, and it's hard to win at home. But you know what? It's hard to win away from home everywhere. Joel Klatt also pointed that out on his podcast. And it's interesting because you think of these teams as juggernauts, and really it takes 1 week, 1 injury, and I think these teams can be brought down to a level where we think they can't possibly go. And I think that makes it interesting. That is why I am a big proponent of allowing every conference champion to get into the college football playoff, because I think what matters is your overall conference play. 1 injury or 1 bad performance really, if it's a star player, obviously harder to cope with long term, but really those are single game events. We look at Quinn Ewers, for example, losing out against Alabama. If he stays healthy, maybe just 1.5 more quarters, Texas might hold on there and get the win, right? If he was only out for 1 week, we don't think they would have taken another loss either, right? So, but they lost and they got punished for it by dropping in the rankings. If Georgia ended up having a bad performance and losing to Kent State, a team that we expect them to beat 99 out of 100 times, they would get knocked in the rankings, and really, that would hurt a lot. And even if they were to go, granted they play in the SEC, so if they win the rest of the conference, that would get them in. But if they were to take 1 loss in conference to Alabama, for example, that'd be a 2-loss team. No 2-loss team, despite only 1 being in conference, has ever made the college football playoff. So that would eliminate them because they played a really good team and they had a bad day in another game. So I think we need to, and we're expanding the playoff. I think it's going to come by 2024, but I think we need to really include every conference champion in the playoff, and not just the 6 automatic and 6 at-large bids that could go to another conference champion. Depending on how these teams are ranked. But we have 10 conferences, 5 Power 5, 5 Group of 5. I think everyone needs to be included in it because you need to have a direct path to making it and get rid of the stranglehold of single games that some of these top teams play with, and allow these other teams to actually break the mold and earn the right to play higher level competition. And I think that's really important for college football as we move forward. Again, great sporting weekend. Guardians picked up the win against Tampa Bay today. Philadelphia with the comeback against St. Louis in the MLB playoffs. We got a couple more games tonight as well. So check those out. Tomorrow we got college football. We got EPL. We got more baseball. Sunday football, possibly more baseball with the wild card game 3 of best of 3 series. Monday night football, as always, Chiefs and Raiders. So from all of us here at the webcast, we will see you on Tuesday for our NFL recap and NFL